Tonight, we've learned Riverside County Sheriff and GOP candidate for governor Chad Bianco seized hundreds of boxes of additional ballots this week. And that's on top of the 600,000 he obtained last month as part of his controversial investigation into the last statewide election.
Sheriff Bianco, who is running as a Republican candidate for governor, is also under fire from State Attorney General Rob Bonta. On Friday, Bonta asked a Riverside County judge to order Bianco to stop his investigation.
Today on California Reports, a county sheriff spent nearly 6 months in physical control of more than 500,000 ballots cast in a California election.
Developing news in the battle over hundreds of thousands of ballots seized by Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. He says he's investigating alleged election irregularities.
Several groups, including California Attorney General Rob Bonta, have sued to stop Bianco and to get the ballots back.
On Monday, in a special session in San Francisco, the state's highest court finally asked him to explain why he still has them and whether he ever had the right to take them in the first place.
California Supreme Court is determining whether it was legal for Chad Bianco to seize 650,000 ballots. Chad Bianco is that Riverside County sheriff and former candidate for governor. In March, he seized ballots cast in the special election for Prop 50. He said he was investigating alleged discrepancies in the election results.
Chad Bianco is the elected sheriff of Riverside County. He was also, until this June, a Republican candidate for governor of California.
The first Republican to join the 2026 race for governor is a familiar face. Today, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco declared his candidacy, and KCAL's Joy Benedict explains why he hopes people will look beyond party lines and vote with California in mind.
In February, while he was doing both jobs at once, his department drove to the county's election headquarters, executed a search warrant, and left with roughly 650,000 voted ballots, about 1,000 boxes from a special election that had already been certified 3 months earlier. No sheriff in California has ever done anything like it.
Feeling the heat, but not giving up, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco says he is pausing a controversial investigation.
Bianco seized hundreds of thousands of ballots from a recent election and is counting them, claiming without evidence there was fraud. Bianco is also running for governor, and critics say this is all a dangerous political stunt.
The election was Proposition 50, the November 2025 measure that temporarily redrew California's congressional map to offset Republican redistricting in Texas. It passed statewide, and it passed in Riverside County by roughly 80,000 votes. That should have been the end of it. Instead, a group calling itself the Riverside Election Integrity Team told Bianco's office it had done its own audit and found the county's ballot count was inflated by more than 45,000 votes.
But months after that vote, a group claims there were irregularities counting and reporting some of those ballots. Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, who's also a GOP candidate for governor, confirmed reports his department is looking into alleged voting irregularities in last year's election in Riverside County.
Riverside's registrar of voters, Artinoco, said that simply wasn't true. He said the group had compared its own handwritten tally sheets, never meant for precision counting, against the county's certified electronic and machine totals, and that the real gap between the two systems was 103 ballots out of more than 650,000 cast, an error rate typical for any county in the state. Bianco didn't accept that answer. He opened a criminal investigation into his own county's election.
California's Attorney General has been trying for days to stop Bianco, saying it was illegal for him to even take the ballots from the Riverside County registrar and to begin a recount. And now it seems to have worked. The sheriff announced this weekend his investigation is on hold.
3 times between February and March, his investigators went to Riverside County Superior Court Judge Jay Kiel, a judge Bianco had personally endorsed, and 3 times Kiel signed off. The affidavits behind those warrants didn't include a forensic analysis, an insider witness, or an independent audit. They relied on the citizen group's numbers, the same numbers the registrar had already disputed.
Tonight, Governor Newsom on X praising the court's ruling, saying, quote, another destructive MAGA election scheme thrown out. Bianco firing back, posting, reading comprehension isn't Gavin's specialty. Tonight, we still don't know where the ballots are and when Bianco may release them.
What Kiel's signature authorized was almost unimaginable in scale. Sheriff's deputies taking physical custody of every ballot cast in the county's Proposition 50 election. Under normal California law, ballots stay in the hands of trained election officials under procedures built for exactly this kind of dispute. None of that happened here. Deputies drove the boxes back to a sheriff's facility, outside public view in a county that had live-streamed its own ballot count just months earlier.
Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, who is also a leading GOP candidate for governor, changes course on his ballot investigation. Bianco in a statement saying the probe is on hold because of the politically motivated lawsuits and court filings.
And according to a sworn declaration from one of Bianco's own sergeants, deputies didn't just hold on to the ballots, they opened the boxes. They started counting. For roughly 2 hours, sheriff's personnel who had never certified an election in their lives were physically handling and tallying votes until Bianco himself called and told them to stop. That's when California Attorney General Bonta stepped in. In a letter dated March 4th, Bonta called the seizure unprecedented in scope and scale and ordered Bianco to return the ballots. Bianco refused.
As always, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Alex Bell. Weeks after Bianco's office collected boxes of ballots from last November's Prop 50 election, and Attorney General Bonta sent letters and filed a petition to stop the investigation, things now appear to be paused.
He said investigating the complaint was his constitutional duty and that the warrants made his actions lawful under the state's criminal procedures, regardless of what election law said about who gets to touch a ballot. That disagreement is the actual legal fight now sitting in front of the California Supreme Court. It isn't technically a fraud case. Nobody has been charged with anything and no judge has found that Bianco broke the law. It's a jurisdiction case. Bianco's lawyers argue that once a judge signs a warrant, the penal code takes over. The voters and the Attorney General argue the opposite.
This comes after the Attorney General and the UCLA Voting Rights Project filed with the courts to demand Bianco to stop his investigation. Now, even though this fight is far from over, the Voting Rights Project believes so far this is a win for them.
That election law was written specifically to keep ballots out of anyone's hands but trained officials, sheriffs included, and that a warrant doesn't erase that. On Monday, in that special session in San Francisco, 7 justices heard both sides argue it out in 2 separate cases. Cervantes versus Bianco, brought by Riverside County voters, and the Attorney General versus Bianco over whether Bonta even has the authority to order a sheriff to stand down.
California Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco's case against Attorney General Bonta. That's happening on Monday, August 24th. Now, the case stems from Bianco's seizure of thousands of ballots tied to the November 2025 special election.
The questioning did not go well for Bianco's side. Justice Kelly Evans read the relevant statute back to his attorney almost word for word, that a ballot packet should in no event leave an elections official's custody, and asked essentially how no event had somehow become some events. Justice Goodwin Liu pressed the Attorney General's side too, asking how far the state's supervisory power over county sheriffs could stretch before it became limitless. Every bit of this happened while Bianco was actively campaigning for governor, a Republican running statewide, opening a fraud investigation into the very county he oversaw in an election that had gone the Democrats' way. He lost that primary back in June, but the investigation and the ballots are still sitting in Riverside County Sheriff custody today.
Sheriff Bianco, in a statement, blasted Bonta and anyone questioning his investigation, saying he's simply trying to determine the validity of fraud allegations, going on to say the only question that should be asked is why anyone would not want an investigation to occur.
Whether the timing was political calculation or a sheriff who genuinely believed something was wrong isn't something this documentary can settle. It's the same question the justices are being asked to weigh. What happens when the person deciding whether an election needs investigating is also running in one? Strip away the politics, and what's left is a structural question. California built an entire system of custody rules, live-streamed counts, and certified electronic logs specifically so ballots can't quietly disappear into a back room. That system assumes law enforcement stays outside it. Riverside is the test of what happens when a sheriff decides he doesn't have to.
California's Supreme Court orders Riverside County Sheriff and GOP candidate for governor Chad Bianco to stop his controversial ballot investigation while the court reviews the case. In a video posted on Facebook, Bianco says he's confident the court will ultimately allow his count to continue.
The court now has 90 days to rule. A decision is expected by late November. Until then, those 650,000 ballots cast by real Riverside County voters nearly a year ago remain exactly where they've been since February, in a sheriff's facility under a court order to preserve them, while 7 justices decide who was actually allowed to hold them in the first place. So here's the question this case is going to answer. If a sheriff believes an election was miscounted, should a warrant be enough to let him take the ballots and count them himself? Or does election law exist precisely so that no single official, badge or not, ever gets to be the only person checking his own math? Let me know what you think the court should decide and why in the comments below.